Broadcast live.
Coming to you live.
We're live
From the basement of an abandoned training facility where we talk about fighting, training, and events. It's the Fight Mixer Show on the Three Beards Podcast, where you can hear about all the local and world combat sports happenings. Get ready. It's time to gear up and square up because we're going live.
And now,
Broadcasting live.
We will broadcast live
With Craig, Chris, Austin, and Matt on the Fight Mixer Show.
Welcome to the Fight Mixer Show on the Three Beards Podcast. My name is Craig, along with Chris, Austin, guest host with us, Joe Wilk, and fighting out of the blue corner, we have Jeromy Mitchell. Welcome to the show. How are you, sir?
Pretty good. How you guys doing?
Not too bad.
Wonderful.
So we're just, I can't even tell you. It's like I've done this a few times. Even then, I was still just like, dude, I'm going to screw this up. Like, I'm sitting here, butterflies are kicking in. I'm like, okay, don't botch this, don't mess it up. Now, thank you for joining us, man. We really appreciate it. Taking time out of this quarantine, because we know we're all slammed and busy.
Oh, yeah. Super busy.
Yeah. So during the we'll get right to one of the things before we forget about it. Our co-host there, Chris, brought up a Christmas tree thing: red light, green light, red light, green light. He's got a really nice story to go about why your record had the spotty back and forth with a lot of cancellations. So the floor is.
Oh man. Oh, this is get your like bed ready. This is gonna be a bedtime story. Take a minute. No, in all seriousness, as an amateur, I just jumped way in over my head when I first started. Kind of like I took the fight everybody, anybody, anytime mentality way too serious. Because in boxing, a lot of times you don't know who you're fighting until you go to a tournament, and that's what I started with. So it never really bothered me not to know a lot about my opponent until I got there, and it bit me in the butt a lot on the as an amateur. And actually a lot of my shows, I don't know if you guys have heard about the like famously atrocious Rough and Rowdy. But it's like a off the street boxing contest for like people that have no idea what they're doing. And it's became like famous from our state, but Barstool Sports kind of turned it in a way of like making fun of people and stuff. And just like really destroying the state. So that same promoter was also into MMA. So with that being said, a lot of the stuff did not get reported to Tapology or MMA Underground. So technically my amateur record should have read 14-7 opposed to 7-7. Okay. But you had mentioned going pro off of a loss. My last actual loss was, or the one last loss on my record was actually me taking the guy down and heel hooking him, him tapping, and then me getting disqualified for it. Because in Virginia, where I'd spent most of my amateur time, they fight with professional rules as an amateur. So I've been elbows to the head, knees to the head, heel hooks, etc. since like my third amateur fight, I believe, or fourth. And so when I went to a different part of Virginia, I wasn't expecting the rules to be different because it was under UMAF sanctioning body. And they apparently allow straight ankle locks, but they do not allow toe holds or heel hooks. So I actually got disqualified after that one. But up to that point, everything had went perfect. And so we were going to take another amateur fight just to kind of get some green on there before I turned pro, because that's usually what people end up doing, is trying to go pro on a win or at least 2 or 3. But it was hard for me to find people to compete against without driving super far. And that's a pretty hard thing to do when you have a family and you're not getting paid as an amateur. So, and most of the pros that I'd sparred with leading up to all these fights, usually the sparring went pretty good for me. So we felt pretty confident in making the jump. And since then it's went pretty good. But I made my pro debut, and then I had 2 withdrawals, and I had 2 event cancellations. And then I got my second pro fight against Dreon Martin, booked my third one against a guy named Fatty Schumann from Pennsylvania. And we made it to weigh-ins. We weighed in, we faced off, woke up, it's fight day, did my my warm-up, everything, my morning shakeout. And then I get a text from a manager that says, call me. And they ended up canceling the show last minute about 6 hours before the event. We had already traveled there and everything. But gratefully, 247's a good promotion. They still paid me my show money. So
did they never give you a reason why they canceled the show? Because, I mean, that's...
Corona. The governor came in and canceled because of Corona.
That's what I just said. I said on the last show, I think it was possibly because of Corona. It was a little early in the virus, but, I mean, they canceled, I guess.
Yeah, well, they ended up having, I think they had like 3 positive tests in the county we were supposed to fight in. So I think they just, a lot of people I'm not going to say they over panicked, but we definitely jumped the gun very fast, which I get that it was preventative. So, but I feel like if you've already got the fighters there, they've already weighed in. At least let the event happen without the fans. The venue and the promoter were going to do that, but the governor wouldn't allow it. The state commission wouldn't.
Hey, Florida man's got you. We're opening up a day early. We just approved WWE, so MMA is just right there. We're gonna get.
I was gonna say, you guys have had a lot of show, or we're going to have the UFC event there, correct?
Yeah.
I thought so.
And then
We actually had the last show before Corona with no fans. It was fight night. We actually had
the combat
night.
Yeah.
It was actually right before Corona, and they just had no fans, but they went on with it.
I remember seeing that. I was super salty because that event was actually after the one I was supposed to fight on. So I was kind of upset that they got to fight and we didn't.
You got to come to Florida, baby, the Sunshine State.
Only been once, man. It's not a bad place. It blew my mind. I'm gonna ask you this: do you guys have cheese at Walmart? I know that's a weird question for a lot of people that don't understand why I'm asking.
Yeah.
We just.
Okay, they told me at Walmart they only sold it at Publix when I was there for bare knuckle.
what?
Yeah,
Cheese?
they told us that they had sold. They couldn't sell me cheese at Walmart. They didn't have it anymore. I had to go over to Publix. They were the only carrier of it. It was in Tampa.
Was it a special
That's
cheese?
Tampa. That's what you get.
I mean, our deli sells cheese.
That's called drugs. That's what that's called.
I mean, I don't know. That was a real
Tampa.
question.
Come
Yeah,
on now.
Publix is the guy that's across the street. That's his
They
name.
heard your accent, bro. They're like, we don't like your kind around here, boy. No cheese for you.
Oh man,
Oh my
if you
God,
think I
everything,
have an
especially down
accent
here.
from
Shit,
where
man.
I'm from, it is significantly worse. I have probably one of the better accents from here. So
Man. No, we're from the land of Florida, man. I mean, we got quite a few stories, but that's the first one I've ever heard of them telling you that Walmart didn't have something. That's yeah. I mean, if there's a place to carry something, it's probably Walmart that's going to have it.
Yeah, I was mind blown. This has held with me since I don't remember when they had their event down there. It was probably August or something. So this has held with me since then.
Wow.
I was mind blown.
Hey, that's what you
Never
get
heard
for
of a
going to Tampa,
Walmart without
man.
cheese.
I apologize.
I love Tampa for fishing.
I apologize for
but-
the store clerk. I mean, hey.
Apologize for that idiot, man. That was.
Hey, were you just there to watch the bare knuckle, or were you fighting him? Or did you have someone?
I had a teammate I had to corner on it.
Okay, well, yeah, I was actually the same thing. What happened with your last fight happened to me at the.
Did you ever think about giving Logan Neal a rematch before you went pro? Because I mean, I see.
What is it? I'm sorry.
I said, did you ever think about giving Logan Neal a rematch before you went pro? I mean, you had great sportsmanship in that match, but he clearly got that nose to leaking early, and it was just like you look drained. You like, oh man, I'm
first
drained.
exchange. I felt like I never got started in that fight, man. That was the big issue. For me, obviously, I got outclassed. You can get caught and you can get beat, but you can also get outclassed. If you lose a fight for 3 rounds, you definitely got outclassed. That was once again me always wanting the toughest fight, because the way I always figured it out is if you're going to go pro and you do want to do something with this, if your goal is to go pro and that's where you're stopping, then that's probably where you're going to get. But if you're serious about this and you do want to go pro, my thoughts are you want to be the best in the world. And if you want to be the best in the world, you got to be better than all these guys anyway. Now, I know as a pro, there's a certain way that you take fights and you got to be a little more intelligent about it. But as an amateur, the way I saw it was I have free reign to just run into everybody. fight everybody, and it doesn't really matter what happens. I mean, of course I want to win, but you know what I mean.
I mean, I like that. That shows a lot of heart. I mean, so your losses don't count. Sometimes you were overclassed, but you still took the fight. So that means you got a lot of balls.
I did think about giving him a rematch. Well, I guess technically it would be him giving me a rematch. So I guess we'll be fair there. But with that being said as well, I ended up going down there right after I had healed because I actually had reconstructive surgery on my face because of my nose, deviated septum, and I ended up not being able to breathe without getting it re-straightened. So, but as soon as that was over, I actually went down there and spent a week training with those guys. So it'd be a little weird now, but especially now that we're both pro. I think he's 1-0 as a pro now. It's not something that I'm like opposed against. It was my favorite fight still. But with that being said, I think he fights only 170 now. So
he moved up.
Yeah, he actually had missed weight by 2 or 3 pounds for our fight when we fought. So
what's your preferred fighting weight?
145. So
okay. We've talked to a few people. You know, Joe was one of them. You know, when we had him on the program for his own, we talked about some people wanting, you know, to see possibly a change to the weights to where we don't have so much of an emphasis on doing those drastic weight cuts before you get to the fight. I mean, what's your feeling on that? On whether or not there needs to be either some more leeway or there needs to be more of an emphasis on, you know, moving up as opposed to going through a severe health, you know, issue of cutting so drastically?
As somebody that cuts a decent amount, I'm not going to say I cut like by far. I don't cut the most. I end up usually having to cut about 8 to 12 pounds. It floats most 12 at the least. I've had to cut was 8 in water. I like it. I feel like I don't really lose much when I do make the cut. So I'm a fan of it, especially since I fall along the larger side of the weight class. That would force me to end up having to move up a weight class, and that's something not of my interest. As somebody that's not going to be like, let's say this happened 15 years from now when I'm no longer competing, I'm all for it. But as long as it applies to me, I would love to be able to cut weight. I wish nobody else could.
But is it my understanding is it that if you're over a couple pounds and you're not fighting for a title, it's the manager's call. If the other managers say, he runs it past his fighters say, let's run it. I mean, you still get that win, you know, even though you're a couple pounds overweight or a couple pounds under. But isn't it the manager's decision in your state as far as around other states? I mean, I know other states have different rules, but it's always the manager's call. Joe, is it the manager's call as well?
Usually, I mean, the manager or the fighter. As an amateur, which was the situation that I'd had in my bout, they just came to me and asked me if I was willing to fight or if I was wanting to make him cut it, to which I told him it was fine. But because it came down to the situation of he wasn't willing to cut it, so it was either have done all this, not fight, or, you know, end up fighting him a few pounds heavy. As a pro, I would tell him to just shove it and leave, or I would take some of the purse. But because once you're a professional, you've signed the contract, you've agreed to make the weight. If I made the weight, you were supposed to do your job too. You should have made the weight. But as amateur, I was a lot less. I cared a lot less, I guess is what I'm trying to say. But usually the rule around here is if you are within 10 pounds, they'll let you go ahead and fight as long as it's okay on both sides. If you are within 10 pounds of like your rehydration. So if I was to balloon back up to around 161 and you were still 147, they wouldn't clear the bout. But if I was 161 and you were 152 and it was okay with you, they would go ahead and allow it to happen.
That's awesome. Okay.
And then Joe, did you have something on that?
No, yeah, I was just definitely he kind of covered what I was going to say. It's different state to state, and in the pros, it's a lot easier situation because there's a financial incentive to go ahead and fight. But also, like, you know, that you can tell this young kid's scrappy, and I think he did the right thing fighting tough fights as an amateur. That'll really pay off. But as an amateur, man, even so, if you're going for this, people don't realize it's typically still you treat it as a professional fight. You're not training differently. So you put 8 weeks into it. You man, the diet to get there and thinking about it every night, and then all of a sudden the guy's 2 or 3 pounds overweight, and you either fight or don't fight. You're gonna fucking fight. That's what we do, you know. But the problem is that that same thing works to why guys why homeboy wouldn't cut the 2 or 3 pounds, because he knew you would fight him. You know what I mean? Like,
absolutely.
but in the pros, then the finances really help that situation, because the guy, if he has 2 pounds or 1 pound, he's going to lose 10% of his purse. Or in Kansas, it used to be they changed it, but it used to be a negotiation at the scale. So you could be with the guy and he's like dying, right? And you're like, either cut the 2 pounds or I get half your show money. And you can like go back. I had a guy give me $200 poker chips one time. We were fighting at a casino, and I was like, "Man, you need to cut this weight." And he like held up the $200 chips, and I was like, "All right, we're fighting. Let's go."
There you go.
So, I mean, I'll ask you both.
But I noticed you love the rear naked choke. Were you trying to get Neil in that rear naked choke? I seen you look like you were trying to get him. I see you choke everybody out.
Oh, dude. I'm more interested in striking every day, and I know everybody says that. I'm not over here trying to say that, like, I want to stand and bang. I'm more of like, I would rather strike with finesse. But really, it's however I win. Man, I get on people's back, and usually it's just probably over them getting flustered due to strikes or just a scramble, and I end up there. I have no intention of ever ending up there. I mean, obviously I'm never going to turn it down, but it's never my game plan, I guess is what I'm saying. It just ends up happening.
And it works. So you just keep rolling with it.
So, but I would be way more interested in striking, which is why I kind of kept the fight there. But I also realized near the end of the first, later in the second, was especially being an amateur fight, he was saying you don't really change much, amateur to pro, which I agree. The only thing that changes, I guess, would be the time. And so with 3-3s, you have to be a little more urgent. And once I had quickly realized at the end of the first round that I was not going to bring back the striking battle, and I actually went all 3 rounds. I never knew I had a broken nose until I was going into the 3rd round. I thought it was just busted. And then the cut man at the beginning of the 3rd round told me I needed to go see him afterwards. He had fixed my nose. But, yeah, man, I realized that I had to adapt to win the fight if I was going to win the fight. But my preferred place to keep the fight is always on the feet. So...
Yeah, that fight, I mean, I know you got a numerous amount of other fights. That fight just really stood out to me because you had a lot of heart there. I mean, you kept going blood everywhere, and you were just you were just working with him. I'm like, he's got balls, you know. Most people would be like, cut, man, I'm good. I can't go no more. But you were ready you gave him all the rounds that was scheduled for. So I'm like, that was one of the best fights I've seen.
Now, Jeremy, did you hear Austin's question earlier? What he had for you? Austin, go ahead.
So it's for both of Jeremy and Joe. I'm watching Ultimate Fighter. I think it was like season 18, and the 2 of the guys didn't make weight. And then I thought I heard him say, oh, it's okay, I'll make weight, and then jump back to 150. First question is, how hard is it for both of you to cut? And then also, he said he jumps back to 150. So what's the point of weighing in at 135? You're going to gain the weight back the next day, You
can go ahead and go first, man, if you want.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's 2 sides to that, right? Like, one guy wants to suck 15, 16 pounds and then be the bigger guy on fight night. The other side of that coin is if you don't cut the weight, you feel like you might be the fresher fighter. You didn't put your body through hell. But it's part of the culture. I think it's changing, but part of the culture for fighting is drastic weight cutting. And obviously I think that came from wrestling, and it just became the norm, And so, I see both sides of it because I felt strong. I felt very strong, and like I had a better chance overall at fighting at 45s, but I was cutting 15 to 16 pounds of water every fight. And then, so, what I tell younger fighters is, I know Jeremy said he only does about 8. And I think you need to you need single digits, because I actually ended up having I was actually hospitalized for over a week I was in level 3 kidney failure, renal failure. And it wasn't due to a weight cut. I was just really sick. But what they had said was that over time, my kidneys became bitch ass, basically, because like they were like, my kidneys were like, I'm done with you, bro. Like, quit fucking doing this to us, And so, after a bunch of those drastic cuts, double digits, 15, 16 pounds a day of weigh-ins, I think I definitely did some damage to my body. So I see both sides of it. I think if you can get within single digits hydrated and you know how to rehydrate, I think it's pretty safe to do.
I agree with that. The the big thing for a lot of people, or at least personally for me, is if I feel like if I don't cut the weight and I compete at 55 per se, which I could make easily. Within camp, I'm walking around 62, 63 before like truly dieting down. And so with that being said, I feel like at 155, if everyone had to walk around the same weight I did, then that would be great. But truthfully, I'm going to fight somebody if I fight at 155 that's usually around 180 or 175 and higher. And so even if I am the technical guy, a great technical small guy will still lose to a good technique having big guy in a lot of cases. So with that being said, if nobody could cut the weight, it would work out great. But since everybody does, you have to. I think the best thing is, like you were saying, find the balance of where you can get to and still get back to a healthy place within those 24 hours. Whereas if I was to chop off a limb and be a bantamweight, I would probably lose more fights at bantamweight than featherweight, even though I'm fighting smaller opponents, just for the fact of you run into somebody that's equal skill, and I have 80% of the water around my brain. He has all of his. We both trade a shot. His shot's going to do more damage than mine. So I think it's completely 100% like stamp of approval on everything you said. So
Yeah, and you hit the nail on the head with the brain dehydration. You know, like a lot of people that haven't felt that before. You know, I've been in fights where I had a drastic weight cut and I take a shot that would normally not phase me at all, and I find it hard to recover from it. And then, you know, and then as we've learned more, and as we're learning more about concussions and all of that and all the brain stuff, you realize that you know your brain is the last thing that rehydrates. And so if you're taking shots to the head with a dehydrated brain, you're way more susceptible to basically getting rocked or knocked out. You know what I mean? So.
yeah,
I've
that
never even
determines a
heard
whole
of that.
fight.
A dehydrated brain. I've never even heard of that.
Yeah, you have a protective layer of water around your brain that
Symbiotic
cushions it, I
fluid,
guess.
I think is what it's called. Yeah, your brain's like the yolk in an egg. It's floating, and then
No, I know you have water in your brain, but I didn't know it goes away. Like I didn't know you could actually
Mhm.
get brain dehydrated. I didn't know it like disappeared. But
Yep.
Wow. And I don't know if you guys have been paying attention what you guys have been discussing. So here's the deal. We're going to call this Fight Mixer Yard Fights. Russo said that if this doesn't happen soon, he's just going to drive up to your yard. He's going to jump out. He's going to punch, and he's going to hop back in the car. We're going to maintain like a 6-foot distance. Amber said she's going to watch. So we'll have a bunch of cars, and we're just kind of like we'll get in a cul-de-sac. We'll just kind of drive around, and then occasionally the fighter will just jump out of the car, and you'll trade blows, hop back in the car, and you'll just keep going like this, and we'll just do it. What do you think?
Sign me up. I mean, as long as it pays well. I'm not doing it cheap.
Dude, baby, you got to keep 6 feet. So I mean, it's just maybe even if we just drive by with the cars, like new way of jousting. You just each sit in your car, and as you drive by, you punch. Yeah.
I mean, we could find some fighters that just run around the cage anyways, and I'm sure there's a couple fighters out there that just like to strike and run and strike. So I mean, that'd work perfect for them.
Yeah.
Got the ref with a 6-foot ring around him. He's like, nope, stay back.
Have they opened anything back in Florida yet?
No, things are still pretty. Still, the beach just opened back up. I was in Daytona earlier.
Mm-hmm.
The beach is open, but clubs, bars, restaurants only for takeout. So I mean, things are still. School's been closed for the rest of the year. Mm-hmm. So I think the teachers need to render some of their salary for us teaching our children.
Yeah,
just a little bit of it. You know what I mean? So,
God. Hey, bro, I was raised by a teacher. They don't got that much to render, bro. I was eating chunky soup and shit. It's not steak dinner.
So obviously, coronavirus has got this. You know, this thing's COVID's just really messed this whole thing up. But let's just say, you know, there's at the light at the end of the tunnel. I mean, what's coming up in your future right now? I mean, right. You know, what do you have kind of in the back burner? This is already a done deal. We're just waiting for green light.
Never anything 100%, but really I have options. I could rebook to the same fight that I had that was canceled to the coronavirus, or at least with the same promotion. I believe he had already had something rescheduled or pre-scheduled, I guess is what I should say. And so I don't know if it would be the same opponent. Along with that, there's actually an MMA promotion. It's probably about an hour and a half to 2 hours from where I live, relatively close. It sounds far away to say an hour, 2 hours, but it's a short drive, just really slow road that you have to take to get there, I guess. It's not like an interstate. So if they had a show there, I would definitely be more interested in fighting on that one just because it's essentially a home show for me. It'd be easier for people to make it too, whereas the other one in Pennsylvania was about 3.5, 4 hours.
Now, you said that prior to us going live, it was a little bit, you hinted at that. So with you being kind of located so centrally amongst all these other states, which state do you find it the easiest to sell tickets and get a fight going as opposed to and on the same thing, what state do you find is the most difficult?
Virginia by far is the easiest for me just because it's where I fought all my amateur fights. So I have a lot of promoters that know me from that and a lot of people from Virginia that know me. So Virginia is relatively easy. The harder state for me would be I've been trying to fight in Florida forever. Let's start there, but that's a drive. But I would love to be on island fights. Every time island fights message me though, it's usually like, hey, one time they messaged me with or not myself personally, but my manager with a fight that was 2 hours sooner than it would take me to drive there. So like. Yeah, like it was like 6 hours from the end. It's like an 8-hour drive for me or something. But I've always wanted to fight there. The other state that's the hardest though would definitely be Ohio. Ohio is usually pretty hard to get into because it's they definitely push their fighters. Like you can tell who they want to be. They want to push people, I guess, to the UFC to make their state look better. Would be the way to say it. So with that being said, a lot of times it's either, hey, do you want to fight this guy at 7-0 on a short notice or 6-0 or whatever they can get by with their state approving for $500? And of course the answer is no. And so usually Ohio is pretty hard to find a decent fight in for me. So it was easy as an amateur or with boxing, but kind of hard for pro MMA. So.
And then the producer, he was kind of prompting there for that. So training, has been the biggest thing. Like, what have you been finding? Are you milk jugs? Are you bench pressing the dog? I mean, what are we doing to keep in shape right now?
Less training partners, but nothing has changed at all, actually. I have a key to the gym, so it's easy for me to get in there, let's say 1 or 2 of us. But really just a lot of alone training, but still being in the gym. We try to follow as many social distancing rules and stuff as we can. Because really, it'll get you a lot of bad press if you don't
law enforcement
comply,
listening. He allegedly has a key and allegedly doesn't social distance at a gym.
But with that being said, the only thing that's really slacked off would be like the actual live grappling or the sparring. But other than that, conditioning, just a lot of shadow boxing. But pretty much everything stayed the same, other than the live training. So,
well, that's awesome. Well, like I said,
I could very well fight tomorrow, as long as you gave me enough time to drive there, obviously.
But I mean, maybe they didn't expect you to drive. Maybe they expect you to fly. I mean, that was flying time, but the purse didn't match the
hit
flight.
Me with that ticket.
That makes sense. If the purse don't match the flight, then hey, I'll drive.
No, I couldn't have bought a plane ticket for how much they tried to pay me to fight the guy anyway. So
yeah, so I'm a fly up here. I'm a fight for free. Nah, that's not happening.
No, especially not like for their guy. I don't even remember the guy's name. I wish I could tell you, but I know it was definitely if you know any like Florida MMA, you would have probably been like, oh yeah, $500.
Yeah. No, it gets a little cost prohibitive to take some of those. Even though you want to, you don't exactly want to go get all bashed up for exposure.
So
that's not what we're doing.
So what is the rules in your state? If you're knocked out, if you get KO'd, how long before you can book your next bout? I know you got to get checked out by physician, so
at
forth.
Least full knockout, at least 3 months. A technical knockout, at least. Actually, I'm sorry. A technical knockout is 90 days. A full knockout's 120 before you're allowed to compete. And if it's like if it's a very bad knockout, so much so that the commission feels the need to add I guess I'll say a note with it. Then you might end up having to get reevaluated before you're allowed to compete again. I had known, actually I'd fought as an amateur and broke the guy's arm, and he ended up having to get his arm cleared by a doctor before he was allowed to compete again.
Is it the same in your state? I mean, I was looking over Florida's rules. I don't quite know off the top of my head, so I'm not going to spit out any numbers. But is it the same in your state, Joe?
It's similar. It's not the same, but they also added which I don't really agree with this one, just because I know like the science behind it. But as an amateur, if you go to sleep in a choke, they suspend you 90 days, which I think is, I mean, it's just blood flow to the brain. It comes right back. It's not the same kind of an issue. But man, I'm just glad they're taking any measures for safety. Honestly, like I'll never hate on that. I train. I've got like 20 plus active fighters, pro and amateur, at my gym, and I care about them. And also, like, you can't leave shit up to us, right? Because
fight the next day.
That's also why Jeremy's he's mentioned his manager a couple times. That's I'm glad you have a manager, man. I think it's mandatory, because if Island Fight would have called you, you probably would have been in your fucking car in your house slippers, flooring it. I think I can make it. But you got to have management to take it out of your hands sometimes with that. So. Yeah, I think it's good. I think the protective measures, any bit of safety, I think is a good thing, just especially because with the head trauma, back to that, getting like concussed isn't really a big deal if you recover, but secondary concussions are what really cause the damage. So, if you're already concussed and you get hit, that's a big problem. That's why like why you see so many deaths basically in boxing. I mean, as opposed to MMA, if you get dropped in MMA, the fight's usually called. They jump in, and in boxing, they give you fucking time to get back up, and then you get knocked out again. Shit, it's even worse. Oh shit, sorry guys, it's even worse. I'm telling you, my shit's propped up against the fucking protein shaker right now.
Hey, at least you're not like those Zoom things right now, and you weren't wearing pants. So at least you had pants. So.
No, this is the first time I've had a shirt on. I only wore a shirt today because they sent me a bare knuckle shirt because I fought for them, so I'm trying to represent. No, but dude, it's worse in other places. I know this is. I commentated for Lethwei World Lethwei Championships in Myanmar, so it's full Muay Thai rules, but you can headbutt and there's no gloves. The other thing they do there, this is 100% true, and it's on Fight Pass. You can go watch it right now. If you get knocked out like cold, they let your corner try to revive you, and then I shit you not, and they'll pull you into the corner and they pour water on you, and then listen to me when I say this, I'm not kidding. It's part of their culture. They bite your ear. Your cornerman starts biting your ear, and it'll wake the guys up, and then they'll send them back out and they'll keep fighting.
Wow, that's crazy.
How much are you getting paid to promote Fight Pass? Because that was awesome.
Dude, hey, listen, I love Fight Pass, man. I'm in quarantine. I pay $9.99 a month. They got kung fu movies on that shit.
I mean, actually, how serious are you into fighting that you're willing to go in a fight where the corner man's gonna be gnawing on your ear?
Well,
the serious question is, what kind of cornerman are you if you're going into a fight knowing you might have to chew on your guy's sweaty ear?
Good point. I do it for my homies, man. I do it for my homies.
We need to get that famous boxer that likes to bite ears. He'd be good at that.
Get Mike Tyson out there.
Joe said he's fought for him, and we know he'll do everything. Jeromy, would you want to do bare knuckles sometime, or is that?
The ego says yes. The smart business side says hell no.
The manager says, "What the
really,
fuck
the
are you
only
thinking?"
thing that I've seen from bare knuckle that really made me say no was after cornering my guy and him opening his mouth and looking at the cuts inside of his mouth. And then seeing how common of an occurrence it was with bare knuckle to get cuts in your mouth. And I don't know why that was the thing that was like, But, I mean, the thing you want to do after you fight somebody is eat some food anyway. Last thing I want is some dude ruining that for me. Like,
exactly.
Yeah. Somebody
swish some vodka around in your mouth. You'll be all right.
Now, on a serious note, that is what my teammate did. I'm not playing.
Oh, I bet. That's what I would do, too. Yeah, no, I think,
it's the most savage sport, man, other than maybe the version of Muay Thai that you had spoke of.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we keep talking about, like, brain health though. So like, I think I talked about this when I was on here with you guys before, but you know, I truly believe that bare knuckle is overall way harder on your hands and your overall face, but way safer for your brain.
Absolutely, because you can't not repetitive damage as much either.
Yeah, yeah, and then also, you know, I told my mom because my mom was tripping, and I was like, they don't have a big concussion problem in rugby. They have a big concussion problem in football, but not in rugby. And because in rugby you gotta technically tackle people. You've got to like you can't just slam. It's the same thing. That's why I'm against headgear. You know, they took headgear out of amateur boxing. I'm totally against headgear in fighting. I think the bigger the glove, the less damage is sustained to the face and hand, and the more the brain does the wop wop wop.
See, I told you that, Craig. That fighter we had on the other day, I told you, bare knuckle bout with him. Let me go. I'd rather get knocked out without pads. If I'm gonna go to sleep, let me go to sleep without pads.
You should just try to win. I don't know why you're talking like that.
That's what I told him. I mean, but Craig is convinced. Craig is convinced that I have no training. I mean, I got street fighting, so I'm going in.
You're calling out Jim Allers.
Oh, okay.
I'm gonna beat him. You haven't even trained, and you're sitting here telling a guy who's undefeated in bare knuckle boxing, and you're going, "Oh yeah, I'll take him." I'm like,
I'd probably just be his friend or something, bro. That's way easier.
I'm just saying, man. Like, there's no difference.
I just got a lot of heart, but if I get knocked out, I go to sleep first round.
You got street fight skills, man. Just take the street fight skills, put them in a ring.
But I appreciate you coming on. Anytime you ever want to come on, like Joe, you can always come back. I'm glad to have it back.
All day. Yeah. Where's Jim at? I thought Jim was coming back on so we could talk shit.
That's what we're trying to. He actually answered back. He was like, "Who is this guy?"
The next morning.
He's like, "Who is this guy?" I'm like, "I've never heard of him." I'm like, "Well, he said, you know, he's not afraid to hustle in a big name fight." He goes, "I'll fight anybody they put in front of me."
Yeah, dude, I'll jump. That's what I told you guys. I'll jump the line. He's already got fights in there. They're talking about fighting for a title. Like, they're probably gonna pay me a lot more money to fight a guy like that. I ain't fucking scared of his ass. I'll tell you that much. But he's a good fighter, though. He's a good fighter, cool dude, and his jiu-jitsu lineage is hella tough too. His instructor's super tough. So. But it hasn't got shit to do with bare knuckle.
I actually got the pleasure to speak to Jim when I was at bare knuckle. I sat and probably talked to him for about an hour in the hotel lobby, like during the breakfast, and had no idea who he was. Had no idea that he was even on the bare knuckle card, or that he had been a former UFC veteran or anything. And so, which I'm super glad I did, because it would probably been a lot more weird, fanish conversation, I guess. Not intentionally, but I would have probably questioned what I said in front of him a lot more had I known who he was. And
really
then
cool
he had fought Let Me Bang Bro that night, and I feel bad for Julian Lane. That's his name. But he ended up fighting him that night, and I was like, "Holy shit, that's that guy!" Blew my mind. But he's a super nice guy, very nice guy.
Yeah, really he's cool.
I know.
You go back and watch that episode. We had him on. I mean,
the funny thing about fighting though is, you know, like if you do it right, if you've trained properly and you really put yourself out there, you've been humbled day in and day out. Yeah. You know, so like it, you know, and you guys know I run my mouth, talk a lot of shit, but I'm mostly like fucking around. You know, I'm like trying to be funny. But at the end of the day, like when you like fighter, like in the public eye, you see a lot of the back and forth and all this stuff, but almost everybody I've ever met's cool as fuck. I've drank beers with almost everyone I've ever fought after I fought them, and like some of them, I'm good ass friends with some guys that I fought. Cool. And then we were holding us back, you know, and then we fight, and then now we kick it. Like it's the craziest thing, but there's a lot of mutual respect and a lot of humility in our sport when it comes down to it, because everyone's been taken down a notch several times.
Said it forever, man. If you took two bars and placed them beside each other, one of them only fighters could go into and one only casuals could go into, you would have 5 times the fights in the bar full of casuals than you would the actual fighters, because the actual fighters know the repercussion of fight going bad. And whereas the casuals think, oh, I'll get a black eye, busted nose or something. But and something else I'd actually been considering here as recent was and actually turned me against the idea of ever competing bare knuckle. I love it as a sport to watch. And I'm not going to say I would never want to compete in it, but let's be real. You watch two guys that know nothing get in a street fight and they punch each other and they can do significant damage. You see black eyes, busted noses, etc. What happens when you punch somebody bare knuckle? What happens when I punch somebody bare knuckle? Somebody that spends every day throwing a punch, somebody that knows how to throw a punch. That's going to be way, way, way more severe than a black eye, busted nose, or even a broken nose. So,
yeah,
exactly.
I'm overall most concerned about my biggest concern is my hand health. Like I broke my hand before, and I think it's just man, the hand wraps and gloves. Like people don't realize, the gloves got introduced into MMA because of hand injuries, not because of head injuries. They had so many guys during tournament formats. They had so many guys have to pull out throughout the tournament, like in the early days, because they'd break their hand in their first fight. So that was like my biggest concern, like especially if I'm single, I ain't trying to break my right hand right now during this quarantine.
This is why I love MMA fighters so much, man. They're so much more fun, man. I love it.
Just like they do on Seinfeld with George Costanza, when you get on a perfect one, you just say good night, and that's when you walk away. And so I said that was a perfect place to end it. Jeremy, thank you so much, sir. I appreciate you coming on.
Thank you, guys.
That was awesome. I said you were welcome anytime. Well, I said we'll add you
Yeah,
too.
any merch to promote or anything? Any T-shirts, stuff like that?
Actually, about to officially open my brand, Clean Cut Killers. I'm not doing too good job clean cut, but working on trying to get a beard like one of you guys.
There you go.
Any beard oil suggestions here?
Right here.
Using Walmart brand.
Brock's Beard Care, man.
Brock's
What
Beard
is it?
Care.
I can't see it.
Brock's Beard Care.
Look at that.
Right
I'm helping you promote right now. Look at that.
There you go. That's the best.
Yeah, we all use that. And just you go on to that site, use promo code 3beards, capital B, you get 20% off and free shipping. So, amazing stuff, man. We all use it.
Beard soap, everything.
Yep. Beard soap.
I need that. Hey, young man, good luck, man. I really like your attitude. I honestly had a hell of a time talking to you. If anything I can ever do to help you, man, I'm easy to find. So let me know.
Yes, sir. I heard you say you had a gym. I might have to come out and train with you guys sometime. Send me a friend request on Facebook.
I got a gym and an extra bedroom, so just let me know.
Manhattan, Kansas. Get over there and he'll help you out.
Take good care of your hands.
Get that link to us, and we'll add it in on this video. Make sure that we put that in there for you too. Get that promoted, awesome. And said like our page, do that, keep up to date, and we'll send stuff to you. We'll do it. We'll keep you up to date, and then if we ever, just like saying, if we need like another person to come on, input, I said we'll get in touch with you. Like I said, because you're welcome on.
Awesome. Yes, sir. Thank you, guys. It was nice meeting you guys.
Thank you.
Right.
Nice meeting you too.
Have a great evening.
Hey, you guys have a good one.
All right. Then we also want to shout out to Nancy Burton, Nanny Cakes, 407-923-9828 or 2898.
Come on, 2898.
Come on. I feel like I've done this no
You've been
times.
doing this for how long?
I'm such an amateur. Oh my God. So Nanny Cakes 407 is on Facebook. Like, share. If you're in the Central Florida area, you can get this cake. If you're a gambler and somewhere out of state, you can order a cake, and we're not sure how it's going to show up to you.
Yeah,
but
we'll get it
it'll still taste good. No matter how it shows up to you, it still tastes good. So yeah. And then like us on Facebook, share this, go to YouTube, Instagram, Twitter. Share, please, subscribe. Appreciate everybody. Amber, Eric, I appreciate all you guys listening, and watching this thing. Really appreciate it. Stay tuned here in about 15 minutes or so. We're going to have our second show of the night. We'll be interviewing the Black Widow, Jessica Borga, from here in Florida. So everybody, that's going to be another good one.
It's already done.
Everybody, thank you for watching the show. Appreciate it. Like and share it, and we'll talk to you guys here in a few minutes.
See you guys.
Yes, sir.
Thanks for coming on, sir.
Thank you, Joe.